Hey everybody, today I'm going to show you how to make this little around $10 ice fishing setup. It's kind of like a dead stick setup. It works good for smaller fish like crappie, perch, walleye, brook trout, stuff like that. It's basically like a dead stick tip up design. It's nice because it gives you a little bit of give for the fish. And they can run all day long with it without having to worry about snapping off or anything like that. So it is something that when the fish grabs the lure, it can run, it can do whatever it wants, and then you'll have to hand line it up. But they're very effective. I've used them up north for speckled trout, walleye, and stuff like that. And very hard to lose a fish because, as you can see, they can run and it keeps tension on the fish. It doesn't pull the hook out of their mouth. Kind of auto sets the hook for you. So very effective and very cheap and simple, and I figured I'd share it with you. So what you're gonna need for this little project is it's 1x2 here. I cut it a foot long and put a 45 on it. So you're gonna have to cut a 45 on it for the spring. Just a normal door stopper spring. You could just screw a spool of line right to the side of it, like put a bolt through it and a nut to adjust the drag, but I bought this little, basically like a center pin reel off Wish. They're like $1.50, so it's got a clicker one way and adjustable drag for the other way, so it's pretty handy. This, you don't really need a really accurate drag for these rigs, so this works just fine. It's quite handy. So I'm gonna need some little eyes. Not sure what size these are. 212, really the smallest that you can get because it's only just fishing line going through it. Some 3/8 dowel. I cut this a foot long, and then some JB weld, and then a file and some sandpaper, screwdriver, some miscellaneous size drill bits, and a drill. So the first step here, we're gonna take our piece of wood here on the 45, get a little drill bit, and we're just gonna drill a pilot hole right in the middle of the 45. Now we take our door stopper, get rid of the little plastic cap, unscrew the base. So we got our pilot hole drilled there. We can go ahead and install the base. And install the spring. Perfect. Step one complete. So the next step is to turn down this piece of dowel so it'll fit inside the spring about an inch. So what I do here is I chuck it up in the screwdriver, or in the drill. And I'll just start turning it down with the file basically until I get it close enough. So I just turn it down with the file here. It takes a while. If you have a wood lathe, this would be a lot better, but I don't, so this is the next best thing. Eventually I'll get it turned down enough that I can wind it onto the spring, so stay tuned. Okay, so I got it turned down pretty close with the file. Now I just take the spring and just the end of the spring there. If you can get it started, it'll kind of start cutting its way on. So just nice and slowly spin her on. And slowly cut its way on. So now I just trim off this with a knife or whatever you have, the file, and then just clean this up with a bit of sandpaper and it'll be good to go. So now we got it all cleaned up here. It fits in there nice. Now we're gonna mark where our eyelets are gonna go. So I'm just doing it about an inch away from the spring, so right about here. And then of course one right at the end, about a 1/4 inch away so we don't split the wood screwing it in. And then one roughly in the middle somewhere. This way doesn't have to be perfect for the locations, so. Yeah, so now I'll take our little drill bit here that's slightly smaller than the eyelet screw, and we'll pre-drill some holes, making sure that all 3 of them are in perfect line with each other and perfectly centered to the dowel. I find it's easiest if the dowel's not moving around on you to kind of put it into a crack of some sort, kind of hold it in place. So I just got it in between these 2 tables here, and now I'm gonna start by slowly drilling it nice and square right through the center of the dowel. 1, 2. Are you still a little bit? 3. So those are 3 holes. So now we're going to take our eyelets here. We're going to start screwing them in. Just go nice and slow, make sure that you don't split the dowel. Then we'd have to restart all over again. Let's take a little screwdriver. Screw 2. There we go. So we got our 3 eyelets. Not the most center thing in the world, but it doesn't really matter for these. So now at this point, if you have a spool of line like this, you could just mount it right to the side with a bolt, drill a hole, bolt it to the side, maybe adjustable nut and a washer to kind of tighten the spool up a little bit. But since I got this fancy reel here, I'm going to figure out where to mount it. So I'm thinking for storage, I want it kind of in between the eyelets. So somewhere right there looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do is mark that. I'm going to drill some holes through the seat, and then I'm going to put some screws through it to hold it to the board here. So I got my holes drilled here. The screws fit through here nicely. These are just drywall screws. I forgot to include them in the parts list, but it depends on what you want to use for a reel. I got my holes pre-drilled here in my board, so now I'm just gonna go ahead and screw it all together. There we go. Reel's mounted. So we're just about done here. We just got to glue in this the dowel to the spring here, so stay tuned. Alright, so we got our 2-part epoxy JB Weld here. A little dab of resin. And a little bit of hardener. I got end of a Q-tip here. Mix it all up until it's consistent. Looking pretty good. Now I'll just get some on the stick here. Just put a bit on the inside of the spring. We get full coverage. Okay. Now we'll take the end of our dowel. And we'll glue them together. Clean off any extra. There. Now I'll put the rod back on here and make sure it's clocked properly. Eyelet's pointing down. Fairly straight. And we'll let it set. Then the final step is to spool this thing up with some line. I used 10-pound Suffolk's Advanced Ice Fishing Mono. So that should work good. Now let's try this thing out. So now all that's left is to try it out. So a little bit about this thing. So there's a clicker to reel it up. And then adjustable drag. So depending on what you're fishing, if it's panfish or something, you could set it fairly light. So it's not really gonna put much tension on the fish. If you're fishing something a little bigger like walleye or like large perch or trout, speckled trout, you could tighten the drag up a little bit more so they can only go so far, and it pulls drag. Puts a little more tension on the fish. So it works pretty good. It's pretty well impossible to get your line snapped unless you run out or it gets tangled. Sure, you could rig it up with some sort of flag. I went and bought little bells when I bought the reels off wish.com. And they just clip on the ends here, so when you have a fish. And the nice thing is too, they pack down into just a little tiny little rig like this, so easy to put in a backpack or a crate or whatever you're using to go out on the ice. Minimal gear, so you can hook the lure to the bottom, or I got it tied to the reel right now, but tucks in like that. Pretty handy. It's up to you how you want to go to mount it to the ice. I only cut these about a foot long, so I'm thinking I'm going to put a angle bracket on the bottom and anchor it to the ice. You could build some sort of base or something like that. Could just stick it in the snow, but you want to prevent it from going under through the ice, going down the hole. So I'll leave that up to you to figure out. But there's your ice fishing rig for around $10.